Good evening. Hello, Thelma. Thanks for joining me. Hi, Mom. Happy Monday. I'm going to give everyone just a minute to hop on here and see if I can get my laptop to cooperate this evening. We all know it's sketchy sometimes. All right. Thank you for sharing, Thelma. I appreciate that. Thank you for tuning in for Mystery Monday. I'm going to give this just another minute. Not too many people on this evening, but hi, Corinne. Happy Monday. We will get started in just a minute. I hope everybody had a good day today. I forgot to post that it was Mail a Card Monday, so hopefully everyone got some cards out in the mail. Hi, Melody. Happy Monday. Sending you lots and lots of virtual hugs. All right, ladies, we will go ahead and get started. Give me a like or love. Let me know that you're there. So today is November 23rd. It is Mystery Monday, and I decided to change my card last minute. I was sitting down last night to work on the cards for this evening's video and just wasn't feeling the idea that I had in my head we were going to do, so I switched gears and decided to share with you a technique that I just learned last night. And here it is. This is called the Skylight Diagonal Fun Fold, and this card is one that I saw demonstrated by Frenchie Martin from Frenchie Stamps, and I was intrigued by it when I first saw the card and thought, okay, I want to see what this one is all about. How do you make this? And it is not nearly as complicated as I thought, because when you open it up, the top piece is the diagonal skylight effect. And so while it might look just a smidge complicated, it really isn't that complicated. You can put this together with very few supplies. So we will go ahead and get started. The first thing you're going to need is a piece of cardstock that is 4 1/4 by 11 inches. So we've got the long, skinny card base. Hi, Bernice. Happy Monday. And you're going to put a score line in the center of the long side, so at 5 1/2. What you would typically do if you're making a card base. So go ahead and fold that on the score line so you have your standard card front. And then bring over your paper trimmer. If you don't have a trimmer, you can use a ruler. So let me see if I can get this on camera properly. What I'm going to do is line up my card at 1 1/4 inches and close my little folding arm there. I'm going to take a pencil and just put a tiny mark up at the top, right in between the bars on my cutting track, right at the very tippy top of the card. A light pencil mark. And then I'm going to shift over and I'm going to use the measurements to the right of my scoring track and line that up at 1 1/4 inches on that side and repeat the same thing. So basically you've got a mark, a little tick mark at 1 1/4 inches on each side of your card. So hopefully you can see that. Now, this is the trickiest thing you're going to do all night, I promise. What we're going to do is we're going to flip open the cardstock and you're going to cut diagonally from your little tick mark down to the corner of the card. So if you don't have one of these paper trimmers, you can use a ruler and a pencil, as I said, and then draw a light line and cut. But what I like to do is I line up the bottom of my paper along the track, and then I'm going to scooch my tick mark over until I can see that in the track as well. So with the nice gap in between where the blade runs back and forth, you can nicely see what you're doing. So I've got the corner, I can't get the whole thing on camera, I apologize, but I've got the bottom corner in between the track where I can see it, and then I'm just going to finagle my tick mark till it's right in the middle where I can see that. I actually lined this one up pretty good for a shot. And then I'm going to slide up my score line, and I'm going to watch, I can see, or I'm going to slide up my trimming blade, excuse me, to my score line. And if you're worried about going too far, err on the side of caution, because you can finish it off with scissors. Since the cutting blade has the little tick marks on the side too, I'm going to run mine just about up to that score line and then stop and open this. And so I didn't quite go to the top, but I'm going to fix that with scissors in a minute. And so now I'm just going to repeat on the other side and line up this bottom corner and then that tick mark again in the blade on my cutting track. And it might take you a minute, but once you get the hang of it, and you can see where the gap is in your cutting arm there, it's a piece of cake. If you were using dark colored cardstock, you might want to use a white colored pencil. I like to use pencil so that I can erase. So what I'm going to do quickly here is just erase my little pencil marks. So now I'm going to take my scissors. Hi Sue, happy Monday. And I'm just going to snip the rest up to that score line. And now I'm going to turn my cardstock sideways and trim just to the right of the score line. You want to cut, I'll call it above the score line, because you don't want it to show when you close your card. So I try to trim sort of right on it, but just a smidge over it. And then I'm going to turn it around and do the same thing. And you'll see what I mean. If you haven't trimmed enough, you can just go back and trim it a little bit more. And so I'm going to go back and trim a little more on this one side, but you don't want to have that score line showing at the top of your card. It just adds to the bulk and it kind of takes away from the look. So there we go. And so now I have the basics for my card. But I forgot to do one piece of trimming, so I'm going to bring my trimmer back over. Last piece of cutting you need to do, you should have 2 pieces of designer series paper that are 1 1/4 by 5 3/8. And we're going to cut these on the diagonal. And the reason we're going to cut 2 pieces is because of the way we want to position them. And I'll explain that more in a minute. So take your first piece and make sure your pattern's running up and down if you have a patterned piece of paper. So the first one, I'm going to cut diagonally from the top right corner to the bottom left. And to do that, I just line the corners up on my cutting track, close my cutting arm, and then I've got one rectangle there. Keep those together and set them aside, and then cut your second piece. And this one we're going to do the opposite. We are going to cut from the top left to the bottom right. Hi Caitlin. Thanks for tuning in. So again, just lining up the corners. Here, I'll move that up a little so you can see. This is the fussiest part. And that's all the cutting. So take these together, move my trimmer aside. So next you'll need your piece of Whisper White. This is what I call your standard insert, which is 5 1/4 by 4. And when we want to position our DSP, you want the pieces that are straight, because what we're going to do is line them up on the paper so they're square at the top, and so the diagonal goes down towards the bottom corner. And obviously with one rectangle, you're not going to get the right piece. If you were to use that other piece, it wouldn't sit right. Now, if you're using if you're using cardstock and it's plain, you can really flip that right over. But I don't want to flip it over. I want the same pattern on both sides. So that's why I cut 2 rectangles. But the good news is I have another set. By taking those 2 leftover pieces and flipping them the way I would want to position them on the card, I have another matching set, so I can make another card. And if you had particularly patterned paper with a specific pattern running up and down, that wouldn't work. And even though my leaves sort of ran up and down, they really don't look that bad upside down, so I'm going to roll with it. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, I recommend using glue for this. You can use your tape roller, your tape runner, like Stamp and Seal or Stamp and Seal Plus, but you have less flexibility when you're gluing your paper down. Sometimes gluing along the edges can be a little fussy. So I have our liquid glue, and you don't need a lot. A little goes a long way. We'll see if mine is going to work here. I was using it earlier. Come on. Oh, and apparently that end's not going to work on camera. Must be camera shy. So let me try this end. And I'm going to bring over, let's see, a piece of scrap paper, since now I have the wider end of my glue here. I would recommend the narrower end, but since mine doesn't want to cooperate. So you don't need a lot of glue. I promise I'm not normally this klutzy with my glue. There we go. But you want to get all the way down to that corner. And so when I go to position, hi Janelle, happy Monday. When I go to position the paper, make sure you can see this, I have a little play because the glue doesn't dry immediately. Now, sometimes it dries quicker than others. 5 out of 6 times this morning it cooperated, and then it's going to do it again on me now. I had a couple where it just wants to stick really fast. But there's one side. And now I'm just going to repeat the process on the other side. So again, I'm going to bring that scrap paper over just because my glue is being difficult. It wouldn't be one of my videos unless something wasn't cooperating. And I did try this once with a tape runner today. I actually did pretty well with it. But I wouldn't recommend it in most cases. You just have to be very careful with your placement. All right, so there's my glue. Scrap paper out of the way. And then I'm going to line up this other piece, sit right at that top corner so my edges are straight. There we go. And I'll give that just a minute to set. You might have a little overhang at the bottom. If you turn it over, you'll notice you have just a smidgen of that little point left. So I just take my scissors and snip it off, because I don't want anything overhanging the bottom edge. That would look a little funny on the card. So there we go. Now this piece gets glued inside the card, but before I glue it, I'm going to stamp on it. I am using this evening the Forever Blossoms stamp set. This is in our annual catalog. Beautiful cherry blossom images. And I'm just using the verbiage from the set. It's got some great sentiments for wedding or anniversary cards. Always and Forever is what I'm going to put on the outside. And then on the inside, I'm going to use the stamp that says, wishing you a long life together filled with love and promise. Just adding some wedding cards to my collection. And I'm using mint macaron for my card base. So I'm using the matching ink on the inside. And normally I'm not in favor of gluing paper down before I do my stamping, but I find it easier with this technique because otherwise I'm sure it would be crooked and not in the middle. This way I can judge between the paper. And if I mess up the stamping, I'll just get a little creative with covering it up. Probably using a die cut or something to cover up my mistake. So we'll see here if this wants to cooperate or not. There we go. I lucked out with that one. So that is our insert. And one more quick thing before I glue that insert in. So I'm just going to let that sit. You can leave your card front plain if you want, or if you want to dress it up a little bit, you can emboss it. And it's not that difficult. Let me bring over my cut and emboss machine and I'll show you how I did it. Hopefully this will come across on camera. So I've got my cut and emboss machine. Now to do this, I need plate number 1. The great thing about these is the plates are numbered. And it tells me right on here what I need. So since I'm embossing, you're going to want to insert the embossing folder hinge first. And I am using it with the Parisian Flourish 3D folder. So I need plate number 1 and plate number 4. And I wasn't paying attention and I didn't bring over plate number 4. But luckily it's only 2 steps away. So I have my embossing folder. And these are 6 inches wide, which is the width of the machine. So what I'm going to do for this one is I'm just going to lay my paper so that the top score line at that center point of the card, the very tip top of the card, is just lined up with the edge of the folder. I'm going to close it, lay it on my plate number 1, and then put my plate number 4 right on top. If I was using a non-3D embossing folder, I would just use 2 of the clear plates that we have. Now I'm going to crank it through the machine. Sorry for the little jiggle on the table. And let me move this aside. Then, when I take this out of the embossing folder, I've got this beautifully embossed panel on the front. So it just gives a nice little touch to the front of the card. Now I'm ready to glue that insert inside. So I'm going to use my Stampin' Seal for this. I could use glue, but honestly, I'm not usually a fan of glue. I much prefer my tape runners. So I've got my Stampin' Seal. And then I'm going to center this in the card just like I normally would on the inside panel. Give that a press. And now when we close it, we have that sweet little skylight effect. So now just a couple things to finish it up. I pre-cut and pre-stamped a gold oval and a smaller oval. These are from the Stitched Shapes set. And I'm just going to put dimensionals on the back. And I don't know about you ladies, I do not like to waste any of my stamping supplies. So here's a tip for you if you don't already know it. You'll see you get a whole sheet of dimensionals, whether they be mini dimensionals or the larger size. Well, don't throw away those edges. Grab a pair of scissors and cut them up. And what's great is you can cut them in whatever sizes you need. Sometimes when I'm using a larger panel, I'll cut the corners out so that I can really anchor them on the corners. And really, it doesn't matter what shape your dimensional is, so you make use of that extra around the edge. So I'm going to layer that together. And then I'm going to put this on the front of the card as well. So I'll use some more of those dimensionals that I cut. And I will use that dimensional sheet until every last little bit is gone. I have to save my money for all the stamping supplies I want. So for this card, I like the look right dead center. Depending on what stamp set and embellishments you plan to use, you could definitely position it off the panel. Like if you had snowflakes, you could offset them a little bit. Just don't glue them down to the card base. As I like to say, watch your dimensional placement. So this one's going in the center. And then I use the cherry blossom dies, which coordinate with the Forever Blossom set. And I die cut 2 little flowers. And so I'm going to put these on either side as well. And these are kind of tiny, even for the little mini dimensionals that we have. So I'm going to cut 2 of those in half. Just because I definitely don't want that dimensional to show behind the flower. So this is a little fussy, but it's not too bad. And it's worth it because I don't want that dimensional to show at all. So there's one little bit. And that's the great thing about the dimensionals is you can make them fit your project. Before they came out with the mini ones, we used to cut the larger ones up if they were too big for our projects. And now Stampin' Up! Made it a little easier for us and gave us the 2 sizes. So I think my dimensional backing came off. Oh, there we go. A little bit already. So I'm just going to pop one over here. And then the second one on the bottom, on the opposite side of the card. And so you can be as creative as you want to be. And there we have it, a beautiful diagonal fun fold, the Skylight Diagonal Fun Fold. Don't forget to embellish your envelope with a little something. You could run it through the same embossing folder if you emboss the front and emboss that envelope flap. Or I'll probably go back and add the little matching stamp from the set, probably the little flower here, and put that on the corner of my envelopes. So there we have it. And of course, as always, I have some more samples to show you ladies. So this is the one we made tonight, that cute little wedding card. I didn't go crazy with my samples. I made a masculine card using Misty Moonlight cardstock and some of our designer series paper. And this one is an I Love You card. I have Forever and Always on the front and You Are My True North on the inside. This is from the Sailing Home stamp set. And I used the matching die cuts and a punch. And when I put this one together, I wasn't real keen on how this looked. You can see I have the rope overlapping the side, and I decided I just didn't really like that as much as I thought I would. So when I put a second one together, I just left that part off and just stuck with the ship's wheel. And I added some of the in-color enamel dots there, just to give it a little something. I did emboss this. I can't tell if it's coming across real well on camera, but I used the Retired High Seas embossing folder to go with that nautical theme. And then since it is the season, or almost the season, I made a couple of Christmas cards. And on this one, I wanted to show you that you have some more options. For this one, instead of embossing, I decided to roll with the designer series paper. So I did the same steps, created the card using soft suede for my cardstock, and then I cut the rectangle for the designer series paper that goes on the inside of the card. But then I took a piece that was 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so the same dimensions as the card base when it's folded in half. And after I did all the steps, I just glued that designer series paper on the flap. And what was cool was when I did that, the pieces that I cut out, I can actually use on another card inside for these pieces. So gives me some more options to play with. Obviously this is a Christmas card, and I used the Perfectly Plaid stamp set. And on this one, I punched a tree. I tried one of the stamped images, didn't like how it looked, so I went back and punched a tree out of just jade, and then I added some of the little champagne rhinestones. I'm in love with this poinsettia paper. And then for this, I did the same thing, different DSP on the sides, and I fussy cut one of the poinsettias out from the designer series paper. And then I used this strip of Very Vanilla, and what I did was I stamped my sentiment on it, then I laid it across the flap and held it in place. If you have a tape runner that's not permanent, I recommend tacking it down just in the middle and then cutting your strip there. You can flip it over and cut here so you can see where you're going to cut. And then after I did that, I ran it through the embossing folder. So I don't know if you can tell, but I've got my winter snow. So that just jazzed this strip up a little bit, which I liked. And so you can see just the difference in the card. And then here I will bring over, just for a moment, the other cards that we made. So you can see, as always, you have lots of creative options. I'm all about giving you options when you are designing your cards. So there we have our Skylight Diagonal Fun Fold. Not much to it, like I said, but wow, does it make a statement. And it's a great use for your designer series paper. And speaking of designer series paper and other supplies, don't forget tomorrow, Stampin' Up! Is having our online extravaganza. I think it's the Merry and Bright online extravaganza. It is 24 hours only, so starts tomorrow morning. There is a 10% discount on almost everything in the annual catalog. It is unfortunately not on the holiday catalog, the August to December holiday catalog. And there are a few exceptions, such as Very Vanilla cardstock, glue dots, but your dimensionals are 10% off. I believe most of your designer series paper is 10% off, and the bundles are 10% off, unless they're on the exclusions list, which you can find on this Facebook page. Just scroll down a little bit, and I will be reposting it again in the morning. But it's a great way to stock up on some things, some supplies that you might need at a 10% discount. And you can use this host code and be entered to win a pack of these beautiful gold glitter enamel dots. This is what I'm giving away for the month of November. So I put everyone who orders using that host code into a drawing, and then I will draw the winner at the end of the month. So don't forget about that. It's a big sale. We don't do large sales like this too often, so be sure to check that out. So thank you, ladies, so much for joining me this evening. I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to do that. Just a little programming note, I mentioned it last week, there will not be a Facebook Friday Live since it is the day after Thanksgiving, and I want everyone to relax and enjoy themselves no matter what they're doing. But I will be back next Monday, same bat time, same bat channel, 8:30 on Monday evening for the last Mystery Monday of November. So I hope you will come back and join me then. Thank you, ladies, so much for joining me tonight. I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I send you lots of love and good wishes. And I will talk to you soon. Happy crafting!